It was a busy evening at the Ivy Lounge, the kind of upscale restaurant where the rich and powerful came to be seen and treated like royalty. From the finely laid tables to the exquisite chandeliers hanging above, everything was meticulously designed to exude luxury. The staff moved with precision, their steps synchronized in a dance of efficiency. Emily, a young waitress with medium brown skin and a quiet confidence, had only been working here for a few months, but she had already gotten used to the high expectations. This was a place where appearances mattered more than anything else, and anyone with enough wealth could get what they wanted, when they wanted it. Emily had learned quickly that the key to surviving in this world was to stay calm, smile, and keep moving. But tonight, she was about to face something that would test her composure in ways she hadn't anticipated. At the center of one of the most exclusive tables sat a man who needed no introduction, Bradley Montgomery, a millionaire tech mogul known for his aggressive business tactics and ruthless personality. He had brought along a guest, his longtime friend, Victor Hayes, a well-dressed man with sharp features and a cocky smile that suggested he had been used to getting his way for a long time. Emily had served Montgomery before, and each time she could feel the weight of his presence. He carried an air of superiority that seemed to seep into every conversation he had, every gesture he made. But tonight, it was Hayes who caught her attention. His behavior was more subtle, but just as unsettling. He looked at Emily like she was a piece of furniture, just another service provider in his world of excess. The evening had started off as any other, with Emily taking their orders and serving drinks. But as the night went on, the conversation between Montgomery and Hayes took a darker turn. She overheard snippets of their discussion, and it was clear they were speaking in veiled terms about a business deal that involved cutting corners and exploiting others. Emily didn't know the specifics, but she understood enough to feel uncomfortable. As the night wore on, Hayes began to make pointed comments about the staff. "I don't know why they hire people like you," he said loudly to another server as she passed by. "It's like they think we can't tell the difference between real professionals and people who are just here to collect a paycheck." Emily's face flushed, but she kept her composure. She had learned that the best response to customers like Hayes was to remain unfazed. She continued her rounds, serving drinks and clearing plates, but the comments kept coming, each one more condescending than the last. It was clear that Hayes believed his wealth and status gave him the right to belittle others. Finally, as Emily approached the table to clear their empty wine glasses, Hayes looked at her with a smirk. "You know," he said loudly, "it must be nice to serve people who actually matter, not like the ones you probably deal with in your little world. Must be a real change of pace for you." The words stung more than Emily had expected. She had worked hard to get to this point, to rise above the expectations people like Hayes had of someone from her background. She had earned her place at the Ivy Lounge, and yet here she was, once again being reminded that to some people she was nothing more than a servant, a mere stepping stone in their world of wealth and privilege. For a brief moment, Emily thought about walking away, about letting it go and returning to the back to compose herself, but she knew she couldn't. She had always believed that standing up for herself wasn't just about defending her pride. It was about setting an example for others who might feel powerless in the face of arrogance. With a deep breath, she stood tall and looked Hayes directly in the eye. "I may not be in your world, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice calm but firm, "but that doesn't mean I don't matter. I've worked just as hard as anyone here to be where I am, and I'll be damned if I let someone like you tell me I don't belong." The entire table fell silent. Montgomery, who had been listening to the exchange with an amused smile, suddenly stopped and looked at Emily with a more serious expression. Hayes, for the first time, looked taken aback, his smug smile faltering slightly. The other diners around them were now looking over, their eyes shifting uncomfortably from one person to another. For a moment, it seemed like time had frozen. Emily held her ground, not backing down, but the silence didn't last long. Hayes cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "I didn't mean to offend you," he said, though the words felt hollow, insincere. Without saying another word, Emily turned and walked away, her heart pounding in her chest. She had stood up for herself, but she could feel the weight of Hayes's dismissive stare on her back. She wasn't sure if it had made a difference, but for the first time that night, she didn't feel small. She felt powerful. Little did she know, her words would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. The night ended quietly, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of what had happened. As she went through her usual routine of cleaning up and preparing for the next day, her mind replayed the scene again and again. Had she overstepped? Was it really worth standing up to someone like Victor Hayes, a man who could easily make her life difficult with a single word? She didn't know the answer, but what she did know was that she hadn't backed down. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she had taken control of her own fate. The next morning, Emily arrived at work early, the cool air outside invigorating her after a restless night. She had to prepare herself for another day of smiling through the tension, serving customers with a quiet grace, and being the face of the Ivy Lounge, a restaurant known for its exclusivity, where wealth ruled every corner. She wasn't expecting any fallout from the previous night. After all, it had been just one interaction, and maybe Hayes wouldn't even remember it. But deep down, she knew that it had made an impact. As she entered the staff room, she was greeted with an unexpected surprise. Her co-worker Lily was already there, eyes wide with excitement. "Emily, you won't believe what happened last night," Lily said, almost out of breath. Emily paused, setting her bag down. "What do you mean?" "I heard from the manager," Lily continued, her voice a mix of curiosity and awe. "Victor Hayes, he's been talking about you." Emily frowned. "Talking about me?" "Yeah," Lily said, leaning in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He's been asking about you. He said you were the only one in the whole restaurant with any guts. Can you believe that?" Emily felt a shock of surprise wash over her. She had expected nothing more than a cold dismissal from Hayes, but now it seemed that her words had actually made an impression on him. She hadn't expected him to even acknowledge what had happened. "Really?" she asked, unsure of how to process this new information. Lily nodded. "And guess what else? The manager said that Hayes told Montgomery about you too. He's been saying that you deserve better than this job, and that you've got the kind of personality that could go places. It's weird, right?" Emily stood still, her heart racing as she tried to process Lily's words. Could it be true? Had she really made that big an impact on someone like Victor Hayes? For all the arrogance Hayes had shown, for all the condescension, It appeared that her refusal to be belittled had struck a chord with him. But why? Why was he suddenly so interested in her? Was it just because she had challenged his authority? Or was there something else at play here? Before Emily could respond, the manager, Greg, entered the room, holding a piece of paper in his hand. "Emily, I need to speak with you for a moment," he said, his tone serious yet not unfriendly. Emily's heart skipped a beat. What now? She followed Greg into his office, her mind racing with possibilities. She had never been called into his office before, especially not after an interaction like the one the night before. Was she in trouble? Once inside, Greg gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to let you know that we've been getting some positive feedback from last night. From Montgomery's table," he began, pausing for a moment to gauge her reaction. "I spoke with Mr. Hayes, and he seemed impressed by you." Emily blinked, taken aback. "Impressed by me?" she repeated, unable to hide the surprise in her voice. Greg nodded. "Yes. He told me that you handled yourself well. He even mentioned that you could go places. Said you're too good for this kind of work." He paused before adding, "He also said that he might have a job opportunity for you, something more lucrative." Emily's mind raced. Was this a joke? She had never even considered the possibility that someone like Hayes, someone with so much power and wealth, would take an interest in her. She had always worked hard, but she had never expected that her refusal to bow down to someone would lead to such attention. "Are you saying that he wants to offer me a job?" Emily asked, her voice shaky. She couldn't believe it. It was as though her defiance had opened a door she had never even known existed. Greg looked at her with a serious expression. "That's what he said. I don't know the details, but he asked for your contact information. He said he'd be in touch." Emily sat back in her chair, stunned. This was the last thing she had expected when she'd spoken up the night before. She had merely wanted to assert her dignity, to make a statement about how she should be treated. She never imagined that her words would lead to something like this, an opportunity that could change everything. She left Greg's office with a heavy heart, her mind swirling with questions. Was this a real opportunity, or was it just another manipulation from someone who thought they could use their wealth to control others? She had to be careful. The last thing she wanted was to become another pawn in someone else's game. As the hours passed and she continued working, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Hayes had said he'd be in touch. But what did that even mean? Was he truly offering her a chance, or was he simply toying with her? She didn't know, but she couldn't deny that a part of her was intrigued, even excited by the possibility. Later that night, after the restaurant had closed, Emily returned home. She barely had time to put down her things when she heard a knock on her door. Puzzled, she opened it to find a driver standing before her, holding a bouquet of roses and an envelope. "Miss Emily," the driver asked politely, "I have a delivery. For you." The envelope inside contained a message. "Meet me tomorrow. I have something I'd like to discuss. Victor Hayes." Below the note, a key card to a luxury hotel was attached. Emily's heart skipped a beat. What was this? A hotel? A meeting? What could Hayes possibly want with her now? Emily stood frozen for a moment, staring at the key card in her hand. A luxury hotel. Victor Hayes, the millionaire who had belittled her just the night before, wanted to meet with her. She had never in her life imagined that something like this could happen. A part of her felt flattered, but another part, perhaps the more cautious part, felt a sense of unease. What was this all about? Was this some kind of game, a way for him to assert even more power over her? The bouquet of roses sat on her kitchen counter, the fragrance of the flowers filling the room with an unexpected sweetness. She couldn't remember the last time someone had sent her flowers. Certainly not anyone from the world that Hayes inhabited. She didn't belong in his world. She was just a waitress, a hard-working woman trying to make a living in a place where the rich and powerful seemed to reign supreme. But now the lines had blurred. After standing up to him the night before, she had made an impact, one she hadn't expected. Hayes's words had been unexpected. The acknowledgement, the praise, even the mention of a job opportunity, she had thought it was all a fleeting comment. But this invitation said otherwise. It was clear now that he was serious. But what did he want with her? As Emily sat on her couch, the message from Hayes burned in her mind. Her thoughts raced. She had worked so hard to get to where she was, and now an opportunity seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Was she supposed to trust this? Could someone who had been so rude and dismissive one day really be offering her a chance to change? Her life? It didn't make sense. But at the same time, she knew that sometimes life worked in strange ways. With a deep breath, she decided to take the risk. She couldn't ignore this opportunity. As much as her instincts told her to be cautious, she couldn't deny the fact that this could be the chance of a lifetime. A chance to move beyond the confines of her job, to escape the limits of working. In a place like the Ivy Lounge. Perhaps this was the beginning of something more, something that could take her beyond the world she had known. The next day, Emily found herself standing in front of the grand entrance of the luxury hotel. It was an imposing building, towering over everything around it, with polished glass windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. The doorman greeted her with a smile, his eyes flicking briefly to the keycard in her hand as he opened the door. Inside, the hotel lobby was a world apart from everything Emily was used to. The floors gleamed with marble, and the air was filled with the soft hum of classical music. Everything in the space was carefully curated to create an atmosphere of quiet opulence. Emily's heart raced as she walked toward the elevator, wondering what was waiting for her at the top. When she stepped out on the penthouse floor, the hallway was as immaculate as the rest of the building. The doors were all adorned with gold plaques, and the carpet underfoot was thick and plush. She followed the directions given to her by the driver, her steps hesitant yet determined. At the end of the hallway she reached a large suite. The door was slightly ajar, and as she knocked, she felt a flutter in her stomach. This was it. She had made the decision to walk into this unknown world, and now there was no turning back. The door opened, and there he was, Victor Hayes. He looked just as polished as before, his expensive suit fitting him perfectly, his expression unreadable. But this time there was no arrogance in his posture, no sneer on his lips. His eyes were calm, almost calculating, as if he were studying her, trying to understand her as much as she was trying to understand him. "Emily," Hayes said, his voice soft. but with an undercurrent of something else. "Thank you for coming." Emily nodded, her heart still beating a little faster than usual. She stepped into the suite, taking in the luxurious surroundings. There were floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline, and the room was filled with tasteful art pieces and furniture that seemed more like a showroom than an actual living space. "Please," Hayes said, motioning toward a comfortable chair near the window. "Make yourself at home. Can I get you anything to drink, water, wine?" "I'm fine," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. "What is this about, Mr. Hayes?" Hayes raised an eyebrow slightly, then sat down across from her. He took a moment to gather his thoughts before speaking. "What happened last night? I have to admit, it wasn't what I expected. I'm used to people simply bowing to my presence, but you didn't. You stood up for yourself, and for that I respect you." Emily blinked, surprised by his sincerity. This was not the man who had belittled her at the Ivy Lounge the night before. This was a different side of him, one she hadn't expected. "I'm not used to people talking to me like you did," Hayes continued. "I want to be clear about something. I don't do this for everyone, but I believe you have potential. You've got something that people like Montgomery and I recognize. It's not just about the job, it's about your character. You've got the kind of personality that could go far in this world." Emily didn't know how to respond. She had always been told that people like Hayes and Montgomery lived in a world that she could never touch, a world where the rules were different. But here he was, telling her that she had potential, that she could belong in that world. "What are you offering?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had to know. Hayes leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm offering you a position with my company. It's not a typical job. Think of it as an opportunity to step into a world that's usually reserved for a select few. I think you could be valuable in my network, Emily. I'm offering you a chance to change your life, a chance to be more than just a waitress." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emily's mind raced. This was more than she could have ever imagined. A part of her wanted to jump at the opportunity, but another part of her was wary. Was this a genuine offer, or was she being pulled into a world that would only exploit her? But as she looked into Hayes's eyes, she saw something different, a flicker of respect, perhaps even admiration. This wasn't a simple transaction. It was a chance to change everything, and it was in her hands now. Emily sat there, her heart racing as she processed Hayes's offer. The weight of the words he had just spoken hung in the air. A chance to change your life. The idea was intoxicating, a world of possibilities she had never even considered. But then there was the lingering doubt, the voice in her head warning her to be cautious, to not fall for the allure of something that might come with strings attached. Victor Hayes watched her closely, his eyes sharp, waiting for her response. The quiet tension in the room felt thick, like the calm before a storm. He hadn't expected her to jump at the offer immediately. People like Emily, people who hadn't grown up in the luxury he was accustomed to, tended to hesitate, to question. But he had given her the opportunity for a reason. He wasn't used to people rejecting him, and he wanted to see if she was strong enough to understand the weight of his words. "You must be wondering why I'm offering you this," Hayes said, breaking the silence. "People like me don't just give away opportunities. They have to be earned. But last night, you proved that you're not like the others." Emily wasn't sure what to say. She had always believed that people like Hayes and Montgomery operated in a world that was closed off to people like her, people who had to fight for every inch, every opportunity. She had grown up with nothing, worked her way up, and never once expected someone like Victor Hayes to recognize her. "I don't understand," Emily said slowly, her voice betraying her confusion. "Why me? What makes you think I'm the right fit for this?" Hayes smiled faintly, his expression one of quiet amusement. "It's simple, really. You have something that most people don't. You've got grit, Emily, that's rare. People with your background, they usually bend. They let the pressure of this world get to them. But you didn't. You stood up to me last night, and that took guts. I respect that." His words were flattering, but they made her feel uneasy. She had stood up to him because she had to, because she wasn't about to let someone like him degrade her. But it felt strange hearing him praise her for something that was just a natural reaction to being disrespected. Was he truly seeing something in her, or was this just his way of controlling the narrative? "And this job, what exactly does it entail?" Emily asked, her voice steady but laced with skepticism. "I don't want to make any decisions without knowing more." Hayes leaned forward slightly, his demeanor changing. "It's not just a job, Emily. It's an opportunity to become part of something bigger. I'm not just talking about climbing the corporate ladder. I'm talking about a network, a powerful network. The people I know, the people I work with, they don't just control industries, they control everything. They're the ones who shape the future, and I believe you could be one of them." The words were grand, almost too grand, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She was no fool. She knew that people in positions of power didn't offer opportunities out of the goodness of their hearts. There was always a catch, always a price to pay. "Is this about you wanting to use me for something?" she asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "Are you offering me this because you think I can do something for you?" Hayes didn't flinch. Instead, he regarded her with a thoughtful expression. "I'm not offering you this to use you. I'm offering you this because I believe in your potential. And yes, I do expect something in return. But it's not what you think. It's not about taking advantage of you. It's about giving you a chance to change your life. This world isn't for everyone, Emily, but I think you have what it takes to succeed in it." Emily sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She wasn't naive enough to believe that anything in this world came without a price. But the more she thought about it, the more the idea of escaping her current life appealed to her. A life where she had to constantly struggle for every inch, where the rich and powerful treated people like her as if they were invisible. The opportunity Hayes was offering wasn't just about money, it was about power, influence, and the chance to step into a world she had only ever dreamed of. But at what cost? Could she really trust him? Could she trust someone who had, only the night before, belittled her and made her feel small? "I need time to think about it," Emily said finally, her voice steady. "This is a lot to take in. I wasn't expecting this at all." Hayes nodded, as if he had expected this response. "Of course. Take all the time you need, but know this: when you decide, you'll be stepping into a world where there are no limits. There's power, there's influence, and there's the chance to become someone who matters." The weight of his words hung in the air, and Emily felt the pull. of them. She had always wanted more, wanted to be more than just a waitress, more than just someone serving at the whims of people like him. But was this the right way to achieve that? She didn't know. "I'll let you know my decision soon," she said, standing up from her seat. She wasn't ready to give him an answer, not yet, but she could already feel the tension in her chest. This wasn't just a decision about a job, this was about her future. And the future, she knew, was never as simple as it seemed. Hayes stood up as well, his expression calm. "Take your time, Emily. I'm confident you'll make the right choice." As she walked toward the door, Emily couldn't help but wonder if she was about to make a choice that would change everything. This world, Hayes's world, was a world of power, luxury, and influence. But at what cost? What kind of person would she have to become to thrive in it? The following days felt like an eternity for Emily. Every moment was spent questioning her decision, wondering if she was making the right choice. She couldn't stop thinking about the offer Victor Hayes had given her. On the one hand, it was an opportunity that could change her life, offering a way out of the grind she had known her entire life. The luxury, the power, the influence, it was all so tempting. But on the other hand, something inside her nagged at her. Was she truly ready to step into that world? Would she lose herself in the process? She had spent hours walking through the city, trying to clear her mind. Each step felt heavier than the last as she weighed the pros and cons, considering every possibility. The life she had always known, the one where she had fought for every inch, was simple, but it was also exhausting. It was a life that would keep her on the sidelines, serving the rich and powerful, without ever truly becoming part of their world. But Hayes's world, Victor Hayes's world, was different. There was power in that world. There was respect. There was the chance to be someone who mattered. Yet Emily wasn't just interested in power for its own sake. She wanted to be more than just a cog in someone else's machine. She wanted to prove to herself that she could rise above the expectations of others and shape her own destiny. But at what cost? Was she willing to give up who she was in exchange for a seat at the table of the powerful? The call came at exactly 10 a.m. the next morning, just as Emily was about to head into the restaurant for her shift. She stared at the phone for a moment, the decision weighing heavily on her. She took a deep breath and picked up the receiver. "Emily, I'm glad to hear you're ready." Hayes's voice came through clearly on the other end. "I knew you would make the right choice." Her heart pounded in her chest. She had made her decision. It hadn't been easy, but she was ready. "Yes, Mr. Hayes, I'm in." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Hayes responded. "Good. I'll have my team reach out to you with the details. Get ready, Emily. You've just taken the first step toward a life you've only dreamed of." The line went dead, and Emily stood there for a long moment, the weight of her decision sinking in. She had done it. She had taken the leap. She was about to step into a world where she could become more than just a waitress. But at what price? She quickly gathered her things and headed to the Ivy Lounge, her heart still pounding as she walked. She wasn't sure what the future held. But one thing was certain. She couldn't go back now. The door had opened, and she had walked through it. As the day wore on, Emily tried to push the growing sense of unease from her mind. She went about her usual routine at the restaurant, serving drinks and taking orders, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. She could already imagine herself in a new role, a new life. But the doubt lingered, gnawing at her. Would she be happy in that world? Would she feel fulfilled, or would she lose something essential? In the process, that evening, as the last guests filed out of the restaurant and the staff began to clean up, Emily found herself standing in front of the mirror in the back room. She stared at her reflection, trying to reconcile the person she had been with, the person she was about to become. In that moment, she made a silent promise to herself. She wouldn't let anyone, least of all Victor Hayes, define who she was. She would take this opportunity and make it her own, but she wouldn't lose herself in the process. No matter how much power, money, or influence she gained, she would remain true to the person she had always been. As the days passed, Emily began to transition into this new world. She left her job at the Ivy Lounge, and Hayes's team began to introduce her to the people in his network. There were meetings, lunches, and late-night conferences where the powerful men and women she met treated her with a kind of reverence she had never experienced before. At first, it felt surreal, like she was stepping into a dream, a world that seemed to operate by a different set of rules. But slowly, Emily began to understand the dynamics of the world she had entered. It was intoxicating, the way these powerful people moved through life, shaping events with a word or a gesture. She was no longer just a waitress, no longer someone who simply served at the whims of others. She was becoming someone important, someone who could command respect and influence. Still, as Emily moved deeper into Hayes's world, she remained cautious. She had seen enough to know that power could corrupt, that ambition could lead people down dark paths. She wasn't naive. She had to keep her eyes open, stay grounded, and remember who she was. The stakes were higher now. Everything she did, every decision she made, would have consequences. She had to be careful not to lose herself in the rush for success. One evening, as Emily sat in a meeting with Hayes and some of his closest associates, she realized something. She didn't have to become like them to succeed. She could use the opportunities they gave her, but she didn't have to lose her soul in the process. The power, the influence, it was all there for the taking, but it was up to her how she would wield it. And with that realization, Emily felt a surge of confidence she hadn't expected. She wasn't just a player in someone else's game. She was writing her own rules. She had taken the leap into a world of wealth and power, but she was determined to hold on to what made her Emily. She wasn't going to let anyone, no one, take that away from her.